Hey guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another rules breakdown, and this time we're going to be looking at this RuneQuest 3rd edition, which came out in 1987 from Games Workshop, Avalon Hill and Chaosium. And it's the first version of RuneQuest where they decoupled the rule set from the setting of Glorantha. So this is much more like Dungeons & Dragons, where you have the rules and then settings separately. So like in Dungeons & Dragons, you buy the rules and then you buy the Forgotten Realms, you buy Dragonlance, Dark Sun, whatever. In RuneQuest, you buy the rules and then you'd buy the setting of Glorantha separately for it. Now, two things before I start the video. First of all, I believe I've fixed the audio, so this shouldn't be as distorted as the videos I was doing last week. I found a solution. But secondly, there might be some background noise, because when I'm recording this, Scotland is still being hit quite heavily by Storm Eowyn. And today we've had 100-mile-an-hour winds. Somebody in my hometown here has been killed by falling roof slates, and a couple of houses within my street have lost their roofs. So it's hit us pretty bad. But that was this morning. This afternoon it's been calming down a lot, and I believe the winds are down to 40 or 50 mile an hour now. So shouldn't be so bad. I just thought I'd better get on with some stuff, but the gusts can still be heard. I don't know whether the microphone will pick them up. But anyway, in these rule sets I need a sample character, and the rulebook doesn't have any, but the monsters all have fully developed stats and skills. So I'm going to use this halfling here. And we've got all his attributes up here, we've got his hit locations with all the hit points, we've got what weapons he's got, and we've got his skills. So that will do us very nicely. Anyway, let's get on and have a look at the rules of RuneQuest 3rd edition. And so skills. Well, skills are dealt with on page 17 of the rulebook under game system here. And you've got different types. First of all, we've got automatic successes. Well, automatic successes are for easy things. Walking across a room, opening a door. Things which you can do automatically by any normal character. So you don't need to roll for those. But then we've got simple success rolls. And RuneQuest is a percentile system. So we'll find skills here. Things like the halfling has climb 25. So he has a 25% chance of success. So we throw a percentile dice, we get 56, and he fails. But more so than that, we've got skill versus skill. Now this is where two people are attempting things. So two people are attempting to outswim one another, or they're running and racing, or they're climbing against one another, or somebody's sneaking and somebody's trying to spot them. Now the defender, the person who's following, or the person who's trying to hide, rolls their skill, and whatever they roll on their dice, if they're successful, is taken away from the opponent's skill roll. So, if you're trying to hide, you've got a skill of 20 and you roll a 10, then the opponent takes 10 points off their skill and attempts to make their percentile roll. We've also got characteristic rolls, where you're rolling something like your dex, intelligence or strength, and it's the characteristic times 5 on a percentile dice. So the halfling has a strength of 7, so times 5 that's 35, so he's got a 35% chance of making those successes. And then we've got criticals, specials and fumbles. So we've got the skills result table here, and looking up his skill of 25, we can see on the line here he has a 1% chance of a critical success. So he rolls a 0-1, he does a critical success. He's got 0 to 5 chance of a special success. Now, critical successes obviously are massive successes. Special successes are lesser, but you still get some kind of benefit from it. And finally, he's got a 97 to 100 chance of a fumble. And fumbles obviously when something goes seriously wrong. It's not just a failure, it's something more than that. And you can see from the table that at very low levels, the critical success and special success are both 1%. But there's a 4% chance of a fumble. Whereas you get very high skill levels, 98 to 100. It's a 5% chance of a critical success, a 20% chance of a special success, and only a 1% chance of a fumble. So as you get better, there's less chance of fumbling, and there's far higher chances of getting special successes. And finally, we've got resistance table. Now this is where you're trying to do something with an attribute against something else. So you are trying to use your strength against size. You're trying to lift something heavy, or you're using strength against strength where two people are struggling over something. Against it suggests stuck door or bend metal bars. In this case, you are checking the active skill. So let's try the halfling is trying to lift something himself. And we're going to be comparing his strength against his size. So on the chart, the active skill is 7, his size is 4, so he has a 65% chance of lifting an identical copy of himself. And you're just rolling percentile and trying to succeed. And initiative. Well, initiative is dealt with on page 29 with the melee round, which explains that a melee round is 12 seconds. And basically these are set down into strike ranks of 1 second. Now, your strike rank is how long it takes you to do an action. And if we look at the halfling, these are calculated out already. So his short sword has a strike rank of 7. His sling has a strike rank of 2 or 7, and if he's using a rock, 2 or 7, throwing rocks. Now, this means that he can make a sword attack in 7. So before characters in 8, after characters in 6. And he could do multiple sling attacks in a round because he has 12 seconds to fill up. Now, movement of 3 meters takes 1, pulling out a weapon takes 3. So if he wanted to hit with his short sword and then swap to his sling, his short sword would go up to 7, swapping to another weapon would take 3, so take him up to 10. And then he would have 2 remaining for his sling, which would take him up to 12, so he'd be able to act in that. If he goes over, then actions are lost, so anything which slows you down beyond 12 you don't do in one combat round, and combat actions do not carry on across rounds. Now, the strike rank is something that I found quite confusing. We've got on page 30 this strike rank table, and it's made up of 3 criteria to work out your strike rank: your size, your dex, and your weapon length. So, it makes sense. We'll go backwards through these. Weapon length. A dagger can stab quickly. Whereas if you're using a halberd, it'll take you a while to whack somebody with it. So it takes longer to use. A dexterous character goes faster than a non-dexterous character. These made sense to me. And I assumed the size thing for the weapon carried on over to size for the character. So a small character would go faster. However, the size is not how dexterous and how fast your character is. The size is how large it is. So a large character has a longer reach and can hit things further away before a smaller character can close the distance to hurt somebody. So size is a matter of when you're larger, you go faster in combat. Now, the thing that threw this and confused it for me was this also counts across to ranged combat and magic. So a big wizard goes faster than a small wizard. Doesn't make much sense, but I can see the logic in melee combat. And those are the rules. That's how it works. Now, combat. Well, combat starts on page 32 with melee skills, how to attack. And it's a skill roll. So we look at our halfling. We see his short sword. His attack is 25 plus 9. So that's 34. So we throw a dice. He gets 98. So he has failed to hit. But in this case, of course, we're going back to the critical hit table. So, it was 34. If he rolls a 98 to a 100, he's rolled a fumble. So we're going to bear that in account as we go forward. Now, if you've rolled a fumble, going back to the section, we can see melee and parry fumbles. So we're going to roll another D100, and we rolled 61, And on this table that we're rolling, 61, you twist your ankle and fall, apply both 51 to 55 and 56 to 60. So, fall, lose parry and dodge this round, take 1d3 melee rounds to get up, and twist ankle, have movement for 5d10 melee rounds. So you'll apply those to your character. But that's for a fumble. If we'd done fantastically well, we've got missile fumbles and natural weapon fumbles. And critical hits, critical successes are dealt with on page 34. Now these do two things. First of all, they do maximum damage. So the halfling here, with his sling, does 1d8 damage, so he does 8 points of damage. Automatically on a critical hit. But they also make parries harder to make. We'll come to parries in a second, but it's worth bearing in mind if you get a critical success, somebody needs to make a critical success on their parry to parry your critical success. And that's the same for special successes. If you get a special success, then somebody trying to parry that attack also needs to get a special success on their parry roll. However, for thrusting and missile weapons such as spears, short swords, arrows, and sling weapons, special success indicates an impale. So impale is double dice. So if we impale somebody with the sling, then we're doing 2d8 damage. So it's entirely possible to do more damage with a special attack than it is with a critical attack. But it's guaranteed with a critical attack that you're going to get a certain amount, because your 2d8 could come up once, you only do 2 points of damage. And parries. We're going back to the rulebook, back to page 32. Parries are made like an ordinary attack. So you're rolling a percentile, and if you succeed, you parry. However, parries do not stop the full amount of the attack. If we go on to the weapons again, we can see that weapons have a certain amount of armor. Now that is how much they absorb if you do a successful parry. You add that armor to your armor rating. But small weapons, obviously, like the dagger, only have 6 points of armor. So doing a large attack could easily overwhelm that parry. Now in that case, if we go back, we can see that parrying weapons can be damaged. So if you attempt to parry a sword with a dagger and the amount of damage gets through the armor that the dagger's providing, then the dagger takes damage. But there's also, if you make a successful parry versus an unsuccessful attack, then the weapon that's attacking takes damage. As they attempt to do the damage, but they hit in the wrong place, the parry's successful and forces all the damage onto the attacking weapon. And finally, we've got dodges. So you can swap out a parry for a dodge, or you can swap out your attack for a dodge. Now, a parry is against one person and one of their attacks, whereas a dodge is all attacks from that person. So you can parry against one target while dodging against the other. But instead of just producing some armor, dodge makes the attack miss completely. So you make a dodge roll. The halfling here has a dodge of 25. So we throw. He gets 83, so he misses his dodge. If he succeeded, he would have avoided that attack completely. Except if they'd done a critical hit or a special hit, in which case he'd have needed to get a special dodge or a critical dodge, successes on those, to be able to dodge out of the way of those higher level attacks. And so damage. Well, damage is dependent on your weapon. So we've got the melee weapons table here on page 36. And we can see here, like, our one-handed battle axe does 1d8 plus 2 damage. But it's also worth looking at a number of the other things here. So we've got a figure for minimum strength and dexterity, which is 13.9 in the case of the battle axe. And for each point that you don't meet these, your skill to use that weapon is dropped by 5%. And we've got the encumbrance of it, we've got the base skill. So somebody picking up this weapon with no skill at all, who's never used it before, has a 10% chance of hitting. We've got the armor, which we looked at before, how much it parries. And we've got the SR, so the weight of it, how much it slows you down in combat. So daggers have got 3, so they're very fast weapons. Axes have 2, so they're slower. But we have things like a great axe used two-handed has a speed of only 1, so it's a fairly slow weapon indeed. But looking at the damage the halfling does, if he'd successfully hit, he'd be doing 1d6 plus 1. However, he has a very low strength, so he does minus 1d4. So we're going to roll in 1d6 and 1d4, throw them. So his 5 becomes a 6 with a plus 1, but we take 2 off. So the 6 becomes a 4. So he does 4 points of damage. So we've done 4 points of damage. What does that actually mean? Well, first of all, you need to deal with armor. Now, on page 40, we've got the armor table here, and we can see they've got armor points. And this is what's taken away from damage. When you're hit in a location, we'll come to that in a second, but when you hit in a location where the armor counts. So if you're wearing stiff leather armor and you're hit in the arm, then you're taking 2 points off it, so the 4 becomes 2. If you're wearing plate mail, then you're taking 8 points off it, so the 4 becomes nothing. So armor can be very, very important. And remembering, of course, that you get extra armor points for successful parries. So that will add to whatever armor you're wearing. But the hit locations, if we go all the way back to page 24, we can see humanoid hit point location table. So we roll a d20. And we get an 8. So we've hit them in the left leg. We've done 4 points of damage. Now, looking at the halfling, in his left leg, he has 4 points. So his left leg has been reduced to 0. But he's only lost 4 points of his main hit points. So he's still up and operational, but his leg's out of business. So we've got the results of damage. Damage equal to or in excess of hit points. Leg, the limb is useless, the adventurer will fall, unable to do anything else that melee round. He may fight from the ground during the following melee rounds. Disadvantage to fighting from the ground, explained in the combat chapter. And obviously we've got the abdomen, the chest, and the head. Damage equal or exceeds double location hit points. If you hit a limb, in a modern day high velocity bullet, hit a limb hard enough to put it out of action, how to slash it up would probably kill the owner of the limb. Slowing mover hand-to-hand weapons do not have this effect. An adventure cannot take more than twice the hit location damage possible in an arm or leg. At that point, the limb is severed or irrevocably maimed. So 8 points of damage would destroy the limb. And then we've got damage itself. So once you come down to character sheet, 2 hit points or lower, your character falls unconscious. But when they're reduced to 0, they die at the end of the round unless treated. And going back here, we've got first aid rules. So it's explained in the skills chapter, and we've got healing magic, as well as natural healing, where you heal 1d3 points at the end of each game week. So healing is a fairly slow thing. And so advancement. Well, advancement's dealt with on page 19 and 20, and these are through skill experience rolls. Basically, while you're adventuring, and you succeed in a skill during a moment of tension, you gain a skill experience point. So, if you're trying to sneak while being hunted down by guards, that could be counted a point of tension. So your sneak skill might receive a skill experience roll at the end of the adventure. Now, combat is always counted at a moment of tension. So as long as you are successful in attacks during combat, you're going to get to make a skill experience roll on your combat skills every adventure. Now, what a skill experience roll is you make a skill roll with that skill. And if you fail, you receive 1d6 points extra to add to it. So when you've got a low skill of 10%, you've got a 90% chance of failing and increasing that. But also, once you get to very high levels, you have a very small chance. So once you get into high skill levels, it's unlikely that you're going to increase your skill. But if you have something like 99 skill, there's a 1% chance you'll fail that roll. And if you fail it, you increase it by 1d6 points. So you could increase it as high as 105%. Now, there are rules throughout of special things which happen when your skills get to that high level. For example, in a combat skill, you're allowed to split the skill. So you would get to 105 skill, and instead of doing one attack, you could do two attacks at a 53% chance of hitting and a 52% chance of hitting. So you'd be doing two different attacks against different targets, but splitting your skill. A special bonus for being able to get your skill up to above 100%. So that's RuneQuest 3rd edition, and I really quite like it. There's a lot of interesting stuff in there. I really like the initiative system. Those 12 segment sections where your actions take a certain amount of time to do allow a lot of flexibility. At the start, when you're doing an attack and it's taking 7 segments to do, then you'll just be doing an attack and some movement to make up the 12. But once you're going further on, you've got some flexibility there of doing multiple attacks, moving around, changing between weapons, and you're all timing it out on when those things happen in comparison to everything else. A very nice system indeed, but really interesting on the way that it takes into account. Magic, as you use more magic points, spells take longer to cast, larger characters with a big size tend to go faster because they've got the reach, but that affects magic as well. It's a flawed but very interesting system. I like it a lot. But anyway, as usual, I've been waffling on for quite long enough, so thank you very much for watching. As always, most of all, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.